A single mother faces the judge in court. No one imagined what was about to happen. The room was full, but the silence felt alive. The tick of the clock was the only sound that dared to exist. Every gaze settled on her, the woman in plain clothes and a tired expression, holding a folded envelope against her chest. Inside it was the reason for everything. The judge adjusted his glasses and called her name with a firm voice. Sarah Miller. The sound echoed off the wooden walls. She stood, drew a breath, and walked to the front. Her worn shoes made little noise on the polished floor. A murmur swept through the room, low comments, silent judgments. "Mrs. Miller," the judge said. "Are you aware of why you're here today?" "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice was calm, but there was weight in the words. "According to the records, there's an outstanding debt to St. Mary's Hospital. The amount has been overdue for months." Sarah nodded. "I know. And why did you miss the previous hearings?" "I was working, sir." The hospital's attorney, a man in a dark suit with an impatient stare, let out a short laugh. "Working where, exactly?" She kept her eyes steady. "In the morning I clean offices. In the afternoon I serve at a cafe. At night, I sew clothes." The attorney folded his arms. "3 jobs, and you still couldn't pay?" "My son needed treatment. I chose to buy the medicine." The judge looked up. "Do you understand that this is a breach of contract?" "I do." "And you still made that decision?" "Yes, sir." "I did." Silence fell again, heavier than before. The judge flipped through the case file. His pen tapped a rhythm on the wood. "The amount is small, but the principle matters," the attorney said. "The hospital tried to settle, but she simply ignored us." Sarah looked at him with serenity. "I didn't ignore you. I asked for more time. Only time, didn't wait." The judge watched her for a few seconds. "Do you have proof of what you're saying?" She opened the envelope and took out a stack of worn papers, receipts, prescriptions, and a colorful drawing made by a child. She placed everything on the table, carefully, like handing over something sacred. "These are the treatment records. And this," she held the drawing for a moment, "this is what my son made when he started to get better." The judge glanced at it without expression. The attorney looked impatient. "Your Honor, none of this changes the facts. She still owes." Sarah drew a long breath. "I know. I just wanted you to know it wasn't neglect. It was love." Some people in the back shifted, uncomfortable. A man sighed. A woman shook her head, as if understanding something no one dared to say aloud. The judge leaned back. "How old is your son, Mrs. Miller?" 7. "And is he well now?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "He's better. He still needs follow-up." "Who else lives with you?" "Just the 2 of us." The judge made a note. "Your history shows you've worked in other places but changed jobs often. Why?" "Because people don't like hiring single mothers who need to leave early to pick up their kid from school." The answer came quickly, almost reflexive. Her honesty made the judge pause for a beat. The attorney tried to regain control. "With all respect, that isn't relevant to the case. We're talking about a formal debt." Sarah turned to him, calm. With all respect, sir, it's not just a debt. It's a life. The murmur swelled again, like a held-back wave. The judge raised a hand for silence. Mrs. Miller, you understand that legally we can authorize account freezes and asset seizure? I do. And even so you have no payment proposal? I have no assets. Only what's in my home. And my son. A soft scrape of a chair broke the quiet. Someone coughed. The tension was almost tangible. The judge sighed, but there was no hardness in his face, only the fatigue of someone who has seen too many stories like this. All right. We'll note that the defendant states she has no means to pay the debt. The hospital's attorney spoke again. Your Honor, I ask that you consider immediate enforcement. The hospital has waited long enough. Sarah stayed still. She only looked at the judge, as if searching for something behind that distant gaze, perhaps a spark of understanding. My son's name is Ethan, she said softly. He likes to draw airplanes. When the doctor said he might be running out of time, I didn't think about any law. I only thought about making him smile again. The judge didn't answer. He only watched. The attorney checked the time, impatient. Can we conclude, Your Honor? But the judge didn't seem ready. Mrs. Miller, who prescribed the treatment? A hospital doctor. Dr. Reynolds. He said the medication was the only chance to stabilize his condition. The judge wrote the name slowly. And he confirmed the results? Yes, sir. Ethan improved after 2 months. Her voice softened. Gratitude and exhaustion mingled there. The judge closed the file. Very well. The court will review the case based on the information submitted. Sarah nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. The attorney gathered his papers, frustrated. I hope we are not creating a dangerous precedent, Your Honor. No one answered. The sentence hung in the air, cold and hollow. Sarah looked one last time at the judge's bench before returning to her seat. The empty envelope remained in her hands. As she sat down, a beam of light crossed the window and fell on the drawing she had left there, the sun, an airplane, and a boy smiling beside a woman. And in that instant, without a word, the atmosphere in the room changed. There was no decision, no sentence. But everyone, somehow, knew they had witnessed something different. And still, no one had any idea what was coming. The sun hadn't risen when Sarah began her day. The alarm rang at 5, and she was on her feet before the second beep. The kettle whistled in the kitchen while she packed Ethan's lunch. The house was small, but every corner carried signs of a fight, mended toys, a worn curtain, the steady sound of hope disguised as routine. Come on, champ, up you go. Ethan's eyes opened slowly. Mom, will you be late today? Probably. But the cafe owner promised to let me leave a little earlier. He smiled, still half asleep. Can I draw when I get home from school? You can. And I want to see everything when I get back. She hugged him quickly, as if that gesture were the fuel she needed to face another day. The bus was crowded. Sarah stood, gripping the metal bar while she ran through a mental list of bills, schedules, and hopes. The office job started at 7. Cleaning shift. She liked to arrive early, to lay out the supplies without anyone noticing. The hallway floor reflected the cold lights, and the hum of the vacuum filled the morning quiet. Sarah worked fast, with precise movements. Each task was a small, invisible victory. "Good morning, Sarah." It was the receptionist, a kind woman who always offered her coffee. "Morning, Maggie. You never stop, do you?" Sarah smiled. "If I stop, everything falls apart." By 9, the office was filling. People hurried past, on phones, laughing, complaining about small things. Few looked at her. When they did, it was with that polite, distant smile. Sarah had grown used to it. On her break, she sat by the window and pulled a small notebook from her pocket. Inside, a pencil list: medicine, milk, overdue bills, new fabric for the night repairs. And at the bottom, a word circled by a child's heart: Ethan. At 11, she rushed out. Another bus, this time to the cafe. The uniform was simple: white shirt, blue apron, hair tied back. There, the pace was relentless, the smell of fresh coffee blending with the scent of exhausted dreams. "Sarah, table 4 asked for more sugar." "On it." "And table 3's order?" "Coming." She moved with agility, though her body was starting to feel the weight. Still, between one tray and the next, she thought of Ethan, his laughter, the promise she'd made that things would get better. Around 5, the manager approached. "Sarah, I heard you're looking for an extra night shift." "Yes, sir. There's an elderly lady who needs company. Doesn't pay much, but it's easy." She smiled. "Any help counts." The night shift was the quietest. In Mrs. Peterson's small house, the wall clock was the only steady sound. Sarah read books aloud, made tea, and sometimes stitched clothes while the old woman slept. "You've got gentle hands, dear," Mrs. Peterson would say. Sarah smiled. "They're tired hands, but they still have will." The hours moved slowly. Sometimes she closed her eyes for a few seconds, imagining what a single day of rest would feel like. Then she'd think of Ethan and sit up straight again. One of those nights, the phone rang. It was the school. "Mrs. Miller? Ethan isn't feeling well. He had a high fever." The floor dropped away. "I'm coming." The bus took longer than it should. When she reached the school, Ethan was pale, curled in a chair. She hugged him tight. "It's going to be okay, my love." At urgent care, the doctor was direct. "We need to admit him for tests. It may just be an infection, but we have to be sure." Sarah nodded, heart racing. "All right. Do what you need to do." The hospital smelled of disinfectant and uncertainty. Ethan slept while she sat beside him, watching the monitors blink. Hours crawled. When the doctor returned, his eyes were serious. "He needs a specific treatment. It's expensive, but essential." "How expensive?" He said the amount. The ground wavered beneath her. "Can I pay in installments? The hospital's financial office can guide you." She left the room with tears in her eyes. She wasn't crying from despair, but from fear. In the days that followed, she tried to negotiate. She made calls, asked for extensions. The answers were always the same. Deadline passed. Process underway. Even so, she didn't stop. She doubled her hours, sold what little she had. Until the day she received an envelope stamped in red, legal notice. That night, while she sewed, Ethan woke. "Mom, are you sad?" "A little." "Why?" "Because I'm trying to sort some things out." He was quiet for a moment. "You always sort things out, Mom." She smiled, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I try." The next morning, Mrs. Peterson noticed her tired eyes. "You need to rest, Sarah." "I can't. I have to go to court tomorrow." "Court?" "Yes. They want me to explain why I didn't pay the hospital." The old woman was silent for a beat. Then she took Sarah's hand. "Explain with your heart. Sometimes that's all a judge needs to hear." Sarah tucked those words away like a prayer. That night, before leaving, she passed by Ethan's room. He slept deeply, clutching a small toy airplane. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "For you, I'd face anything." And the next morning, that's exactly what she did. When the sun touched the courthouse windows, Sarah was already there. The same envelope in her hands, the same fear dressed as courage. With every step, she remembered the phrase she'd heard, "Explain with your heart." And as she waited for the judge to call her, she couldn't imagine that simple sentence would change everything, not just for her, but for everyone about to hear her story. The courtroom door opened and the sound echoed off the walls. Sarah entered, once again holding the envelope. Same place, same judge, but something felt different that morning. The gallery was fuller. There were reporters, onlookers, and even people she'd never seen before. The case of a single mother facing the hospital had drawn attention. She took a breath and walked to the same seat. The ceiling lights glinted off drying tears that insisted on returning. Case number 417B, Sarah Miller versus St. Mary's Hospital, the bailiff announced. Judge Thompson looked up. "We may begin." The hospital's attorney, Mr. Clark, stood first. "Your Honor, we're back to conclude the judgment of a debt that has dragged on for months. While we understand Mrs. Miller's personal difficulties, the law is clear. The hospital provided services and was not paid." Sarah listened in silence. There was no anger. Only the calm of someone who had faced harder pains. The judge gestured for him to sit. "Mrs. Miller, did you bring any additional documents?" She stood. "I did." From the envelope, she pulled not just papers, but small keepsakes. A photo of Ethan in the hospital, a note in a child's handwriting. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me." The judge looked surprised. "He gave me this when he got better," Sarah explained. "I kept it because it reminded me it was all worth it." The attorney cleared his throat, uneasy. "Your Honor, with respect, these emotions do not change the fact that..." The judge cut him off with a gesture. "Mr. Clark, let her speak." Sarah drew a slow breath. "I'm not a perfect person. I've made mistakes, yes. But when a doctor looks you in the eye and says your child may not see next month, the law stops being a piece of paper. It becomes a weight you carry with your heart. I only did what any mother would do." The room fell still. The air conditioner's hum was the only sound. For the first time, the judge seemed to struggle to remain neutral. "Go on, Mrs. Miller." "I tried to pay." I worked mornings, afternoons, nights. I slept 2, 3 hours. Sometimes with my head on the sewing machine. And every time I thought I was closer, another bill appeared. Another urgency. But I never stopped trying. A man in the back discreetly wiped his eyes. Sarah looked at the judge, then at the attorney. I'm not asking for pity. I just want you to know this debt doesn't represent who I am. It represents how hard I fought to see my son smile. Judge Thompson leaned back. Mrs. Miller, you understand that legally I cannot decide based on emotion alone? I do, Your Honor. But sometimes emotion is the purest truth there is. He didn't answer at once. He only stared at the pages in front of him. Every printed word seemed to lose meaning beside what was being said. The attorney stood again, more restrained. Your Honor, the hospital isn't seeking punishment, only the agreement's fulfillment. Perhaps we can offer a new payment plan. Sarah met his eyes, steady. I don't know how much I can pay, sir. But what I have, I'll give. The judge nodded slowly, as if absorbing every syllable. Mrs. Miller, is there anything else you'd like to say before I finalize the case? She thought for a moment, then spoke softly, but firm. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for being here, but for having the chance to fight. Because for a long time I thought no one would hear my voice. And today, I'm being heard. The silence that followed felt almost sacred. Judge Thompson took off his glasses and set them on the bench. Mrs. Miller, the court recognizes the effort and the exceptional circumstances in this case. The debt will be temporarily suspended pending review. The hospital will receive formal notice. Case closed. The gavel strike echoed through the room. But what happened next, no one expected. A woman in the audience began to clap. Then another. And another. Within seconds, everyone was on their feet. Sarah stood motionless, confused. People applauded, some crying. Even the hospital's attorney, embarrassed, lowered his head. Judge Thompson took a breath. Order in the court, he said, but his voice faltered. Sarah turned and looked at him. For a moment, she saw something different in that cold gaze, humanity. He cleared his throat. Mrs. Miller, it's been many years since I've seen anything like this in this courtroom. Sometimes we forget justice begins inside people. She nodded, unable to speak. The tears finally fell, this time from relief. In the hallway, as she stepped out, reporters closed in. Mrs. Miller, what are you feeling right now? She answered simply, gratitude. Because someone finally heard a mother. Across the street, Ethan waited with a school friend's mother. When he saw her, he ran. Mom! Sarah hugged him tight. It's all right now. For real? For real. Cameras captured the embrace. The sun caught her tears, and the boy's smile seemed to light up the world. But no one knew that this was only the beginning. The case went viral, newspapers reported it. Within days, people from all over the country sent letters, messages, help. One read, you reminded me why I chose to become a doctor. Another, I lost my mother recently. Your courage made me remember her. Sarah read each one with the same care she'd had opening that envelope in court. not from vanity, but out of respect for the empathy rising again in people's hearts. Judge Thompson received hundreds of messages too. Some called him a hero. Others criticized him. But he knew something inside had changed. That night, as he closed the file on another case, he looked at the photo of his late wife on his desk and whispered, "You would be proud of this, love." Across town, Sarah made dinner. Ethan drew a new airplane, bigger, with wings outstretched. "Mom, this one is going to fly really high." "It will, my love." She looked out the window. The city lights seemed softer that night. Maybe because, for the first time in a long time, she believed the world could still be fair. And so, the woman who once walked into court in fear, left it leaving behind a trail of hope no one could erase. The days that followed were different for Sarah. There was no longer the fear of opening the mail, no constant weight of piled up bills on the table. There was silence, the good kind, the kind that comes after a storm. But with it came something unexpected. Letters. Packages. Messages from strangers who had watched the hearing, now everywhere online. "You made me believe again. My brother is sick, and your story gave me strength. I was an intern that day, and I'll never look at a mother the same way." Sarah read each word slowly. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she smiled. In all of them she felt the same thing, that her pain had become a bridge for someone else. Ethan found it magical. "Mom, look. This letter came from Australia." "Really?" "They sent a drawing, just like mine." He proudly showed the colorful paper, where a child on the other side of the world had drawn an airplane flying over clouds. Sarah hugged him, moved. "See, son? When we do good, good travels far." Weeks passed, and the case became a topic on news shows and TV programs. People called Sarah the mother who made the judge cry. But to her, it was the reflection of something bigger, a reminder that compassion still existed. One day, while she was cleaning the small apartment, there was a knock at the door. A tall man stood there, simple suit, kind eyes. "Mrs. Miller?" "Yes. I'm Reverend Collins, from the St. John community. We saw your story and would like to offer Ethan a scholarship at our school." Sarah was silent, unsure what to say. I don't know if I can accept. This isn't charity, Mrs. Miller. It's gratitude. Your example reminded many people what faith is." The tears arrived before the words. "Thank you. Truly." That night, she stared at the envelope in her hands. This time, it wasn't a warning or a bill. It was a letter of acceptance. At the top, the name, Ethan Miller, full scholarship. The boy ran to her, curious. "What is it, Mom?" "It's the start of something new." He grinned. "Will you go with me?" "Of course I will." In the courthouse, the echo of that story still lingered. Judge Thompson had become almost a symbol. In interviews, he was direct. "I didn't cry out of pity. I cried because I realized how often we stop listening." Some colleagues disagreed. Others admired him in silence. But he kept working the same way, only with a more open heart. One afternoon, while reviewing a new case, he received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a child's drawing, an airplane and two people holding hands. and a sentence in shaky letters: "Thank you for listening to my mom." Judge Thompson stared at the drawing for a long time. Then he hung it on the wall beside his diplomas. "It's the only one that really matters," he murmured. Across town, Sarah carried on, but now with something she'd never had before: peace. She still worked, still cared for Mrs. Peterson, still sewed at night. But fear had turned into purpose. One day, Mrs. Peterson asked, "Sarah, have you thought about telling your story?" "Telling it?" "Yes. To other women. To those who think they can't." Sarah thought for a moment. "I don't know if I can speak in public." "You already did, dear. In that courtroom." And the whole world heard. The words echoed in her mind. The next week, a friend from church invited her to give a short testimony at a mother's gathering. Sarah hesitated, then said yes. In a simple hall, in front of 20 women, she held the microphone with trembling hands. "I never thought I'd be here. I always believed my story was only mine. But I learned that when we share pain with love, it turns into hope." The room went quiet. Some cried. Others only nodded, as if they understood. "I'm not a hero," she continued. "I'm just a mother who tried to do what's right. And if I could, you can too." At the end, the women applauded. Not like the thunder of the courtroom, but with the warmth of those who recognize a kindred soul. Ethan, in the front row, smiled. "You did great, Mom. I was nervous. Didn't look like it." She laughed. "You really think so?" "I know so. You're the bravest person I know." Later, back home, Sarah looked out the window. The toy airplane still sat on the shelf. Beside it, the crumpled envelope, the same one that once carried pain, now holding a sweet memory. On the back of the envelope, she wrote something with a blue pen. "Hope is stronger than fear." The next morning, she placed the envelope in a box with Ethan's drawings and the letters she'd received. And with a smile, she put it on the highest shelf. Not because she wanted to forget, but because she knew that story had already done its job. It had begun with debt, tears, and judgment. It ended with faith, love, and the simple power of a voice heard at the right moment. And while Ethan ran through the small apartment playing airplane, Sarah looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the sun cut through the clouds, lighting the modest neighborhood as if the universe had paused to listen, too. And in that calm light, a quiet truth revealed itself. Sometimes the greatest victories happen when we refuse to stop loving. Months passed, and Sarah's life found an easier rhythm. The courtroom was now a distant chapter, but the memory never faded. Sometimes, when the wind slipped through the kitchen window, she could still hear the echo of the judge's words. The court recognizes the effort. Strange, how a sentence could change so much. That ruling, spoken on an ordinary day, had shifted not only her fate, but the fate of many others. One Sunday, the phone rang. It was a TV producer. "Mrs. Miller? We're preparing a special on true stories of resilience. We'd love for you to participate." Sarah almost declined. "I'm not a celebrity," she said. The woman on the line replied, "That's exactly why. Because your truth reached people's hearts." The following week, cameras filled the small home. Lights, microphones, questions. Ethan was thrilled. "Mom, we're going to be on TV?" "Looks like it." "Can I wear my airplane shirt?" "Of course." During the interview, the reporter asked, "What went through your mind when the judge suspended the debt?" Sarah thought for a moment. That I wasn't alone anymore. That someone finally saw the human being before the problem. The program aired on a Thursday night. Millions watched. In the days after, messages poured in from everywhere. Some from mothers, some from fathers, some from people who simply needed to hear that goodness still existed in the world. One letter, from a small village, said, "I was about to give up. Your story made me try one more time." Sarah placed that letter in a new envelope. This time, white, clean, unmarked. And in the corner she wrote, "To remember it's never too late." Meanwhile, Judge Thompson faced a new hearing. This time, a young man charged with minor offenses. The boy stared at the floor, avoiding eye contact. The judge watched him in silence for a while, then said, "You know, not long ago, someone taught me that sometimes a word can save a life. So before I rule, I want to hear your story." The room fell still. The boy's attorney looked up, surprised. This wasn't the same rigid judge as before. This was someone changed by the empathy of a woman who had once come there only to ask for more time. Across town, Sarah kept sewing. But now, her small work table had a new purpose. Between fabrics and thread, there were papers with names, addresses, and dates. She had begun answering letters. One by one. By hand. "Dear Ann, you're not alone. Dear Mark, pain doesn't last forever. Dear Lucy, the world still needs people like you." It was her way of giving back what she had received. One day, she got an unexpected visit. Maggie, the old receptionist from the office. "Sarah, I saw you on TV. You were incredible." Sarah laughed. "I was shaking the whole time. No one noticed. And the best part? The company launched an internal donation drive because of you." "Because of me?" "Yes." The owner said he was ashamed he'd never noticed who cleaned his floors every day. Sarah hugged her friend, moved. Then it was worth it. Every second. Later, at day's end, Ethan burst in from school. "Mom, the principal said there's going to be an essay contest. The theme is who inspires me. Can I write about you?" Sarah smiled. "Of course, but write the truth, okay? Then it'll be easy." Days later, he showed her the text. "My mom is the strongest person I know. When the world got heavy, she didn't scream. She kept walking. And that's why I want to be like her when I grow up." Sarah read in silence, tears sliding slowly. "Can I keep this?" she asked. "Sure. But promise you'll read it in court one day, if you become a judge?" She laughed. "A judge? Me? Why not?" "Because I'm already busy being your mom." Their laughter filled the room. Time moved on. Ethan grew. Years later, Sarah walked the quiet city streets. Trees swayed in the wind and, in the distance, the church bell rang its familiar note. She paused for a moment in front of the courthouse. She looked at the old building, and her heartbeat eased. The same place that once scared her now felt welcoming. She went in. The guard, older now, smiled. "Mrs. Miller. Good to see you again." "It's good to be back." There was a new plaque on the wall, in memory of the hearing that reminded the world to listen with the heart. Sarah ran her fingers over the letters. Inside, the new judge, a young man, paused his remarks to study the gallery. And in the crowd, Sarah noticed a mother crying, holding a child. The sight took her back. She smiled, quietly, and left before anyone recognized her. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. The sky carried the same golden tone as the afternoon when everything changed. She walked to a bench in the square and took a small envelope from her pocket. Inside, Ethan's old note, "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me." The paper was worn, but the feeling was the same. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God, for teaching me that even a courtroom can be a place of love." A soft wind answered. And in that moment, Sarah understood something she'd likely known all along. That life's true judgment doesn't happen in courtrooms, but in the choices we make every day. There, with a steady heart and a gaze full of faith, she knew she had won. Not because she won the case, but because she turned pain into hope, fear into courage, and a crumpled envelope into a symbol of redemption. As the sun slipped beyond the horizon, the narrator closes in a gentle voice. And that's how a single mother faced a judge in court and made the world stand up. Years passed quietly, but not in forgetfulness. Sarah Miller's story still echoed in schools, churches, and courtrooms. No one knew exactly when she had left the city. Some said she moved near the sea. Others said she traveled sharing her story. One thing was certain, no one forgot her. On a clear morning, the courthouse looked different. The walls were freshly painted, the wood floors restored. In the lobby, a metal plaque gleamed in the sunlight. On it, a simple phrase: "Compassion doesn't weaken justice, it makes it possible." Signed, Judge William Thompson. Inside the main courtroom, a group of law students toured in silence. One young man raised his hand. "Professor, is it true a woman made the judge cry here?" The guide smiled. "It's true. And it happened right here." The group approached the plaque. "Who is she?" Another student asked. "A mother. Just a mother." Across the country, the sea crashed against rocks in a small coastal village. A gray-haired woman placed flowers on the damp sand. In her hands, an old envelope, carefully sealed in plastic. The wind blew, the waves sang, gulls called in the distance. It was Sarah. Years had passed, but her gaze remained the same, quiet, attentive, full of faith. Ethan, now an adult, walked beside her. "Do you always bring that envelope?" "Yes." "Even after all this time?" "Some things you don't leave behind, son. You just learn to carry them lightly." He looked toward the horizon. "I applied to law school." Sarah smiled. "I already knew you would. I want to defend those without a voice. Like you did. You'll be better than me, Ethan. I just want to be fair." They stood in silence for a while. The sound of the ocean filled everything. Then Sarah opened the envelope with care. Inside, the same childhood note, now yellowed by time. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me." She read it like a prayer. This note saved me more than once. Ethan placed his hand over hers. "Now it's my turn to carry it." He slipped the paper into his pocket, gently, as if receiving a legacy. The wind rose and Sarah closed her eyes. "Do you feel it, son?" "Feel what?" "Peace." Back in the city, a foundation was created. Its name, the Miller Foundation. Its mission, to provide free legal support to single mothers and families in financial crisis. In the lobby, a black and white photo showed Sarah and Ethan leaving the courthouse. Below it, a caption. "Hope is not the absence of pain. It's the courage to go on." Years later, the foundation building became a place people visited. Schoolchildren came on field trips to learn about empathy and justice. Teachers used Sarah's case as an example of ethics and humanity. On one visit, a brown-eyed girl stopped in front of the photo. "Teacher, is she still alive?" "We don't know for sure," the guide answered. "But even if she isn't, stories like hers don't die." The girl stared at the picture for a few seconds and whispered, "I want to be like her." Outside, the wind moved the trees in the courtyard. An envelope slid off the donation bench, carried by the breeze. Inside, a single sentence written in a shaky hand. "Hope is stronger than fear." No one knew who left it, but some swear the courthouse bell rang on its own that afternoon. Meanwhile, far away, in a small house facing the sea, Sarah sewed. Yes, she still sewed. Her hands were slower now, but the gestures were the same. Ethan, now a graduate, read documents beside her. "Mom, the judge in the Johnson case accepted the defense. I got the wrongful charge overturned." Sarah smiled. "See? There's still room in the world for what's right." He stood and hugged her. "I only did it because you taught me to listen." She laughed softly. "And you always taught me to keep going." Outside, the ocean clapped against the rocks like distant applause. The sun sank slowly, painting the sky gold and rose. Sarah looked at the horizon and thought of everything she'd lived through. The fear, the courtroom, the judge, the letters, the people. Every fragment made sense now. She sighed and said, "If anyone ever asks who I was, tell them I was a mother who believed." Ethan answered, "I'll say you were the woman who made the world remember what justice is." They laughed together. Their laughter blended with the sound of the sea. And for a moment, time seemed to stop. In the sky, a plane cut through the clouds. Like the same paper airplane Ethan used to draw as a child. Sarah watched it until it slipped beyond the horizon. And then, the narrator closes, voice calm, almost a whisper. Years ago, a single mother walked into a courtroom to explain a debt. She walked out having changed a judge's heart and inspired an entire generation. Because sometimes, true justice isn't made of loss, but of love. Time moved like the wind, silent, but impossible to ignore. The waves kept touching the shore, and the White House where Sarah and Ethan lived had become known as the House of Hope. People came from far away, some seeking advice, others simply wanting to be heard. Sarah welcomed everyone with the same simple smile and served warm tea before listening closely to every story. When they finished, she would say, "You're stronger than you think. You just need to remember it." Some returned with flowers, others with letters, others with a hug. No one left the same. One golden afternoon, Ethan rushed in, saying someone was at the door. Sarah went to answer it. A tall man with gray hair and tired eyes stood waiting, hands clasped. She knew him at once. William Thompson, the judge. He smiled, humbly, said he'd retired and needed to see her. She invited him in. They sat on the wooden bench on the porch, the sea behind them. "I came to say thank you," he said. "That hearing changed my life." Sarah answered, "It changed mine too." He took a yellowed envelope from his pocket, the same one she had once held in fear in the courtroom. "I kept it as a reminder," he said. "Before I ruled on any case, I looked at this envelope. I wanted to remember that behind every case there is a person." She stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "I kept your look. That's how I learned even those who enforce the law can feel." They watched the horizon together. The wind carried the scent of the sea and the memory of a time that felt distant, yet alive. Their son, grown now, brought tea and joined them. The judge shared how he'd begun visiting shelters and schools, trying to teach young lawyers to see the human before the rules. Sarah listened in silence, wearing a calm smile. "It was a good cry that day," he said. "It was a new beginning," she replied. The sun lowered, turning the sky to gold. The former judge said goodbye with a firm handshake, almost emotional. He said he finally understood what justice was. When his car disappeared down the road, Sarah watched until the last glint of light was gone. She stepped inside, looked at Ethan, and said, "He changed." "And it all began with a crumpled envelope," her son replied. "Maybe the world needs more envelopes like that." The next morning, Sarah wrote a letter. She placed it in a fresh envelope and left it on the table. No name, no address. On the top, only, "For anyone who thinks it's too late." Inside, a single line, "It isn't." The day moved gently. The sound of the waves filled the air, and the wind played in the curtains. Sarah looked out at the sea, remembering everything she had lived, the fear, the courtroom, the judge's gaze, her son's embrace. It all seemed to fit a larger purpose. She thought of the people she had met, the letters she had received, the lives that crossed her path. Each one like a thread stitched into the same story. At dusk, she walked along the sand. The ocean was calm, the sky golden. She walked slowly, with the serenity of someone who had already understood life's meaning. She stopped at the water's edge, drew a deep breath, and smiled. She thought about how it all began with a debt and an envelope, and how it ended with faith, love, and transformation. Because, in the end, true justice doesn't live in the laws, it lives in our choices. And true strength isn't in winning, but in keeping faith, even when the world seems not to see. Sarah returned home as night fell. The breeze was light. Peace in every step. And so, the woman who once walked into a courtroom afraid left the world filled with hope.